My first memory of understanding the power of the subconscious mind wasn't in a psychology classroom or while reading some groundbreaking self-help book. It was on a little league baseball field when I was 11 years old. I was the kid who couldn't hit to save his life. 27 straight strikeouts over 9 games. Not exactly the baseball prodigy my father had hoped for. Before the 10th game, Coach Miller took me aside. Instead of the usual technical advice about elbow position and swing timing, he said something that changed everything. "Alex, tonight when you go to bed, I want you to spend 5 minutes imagining yourself hitting the ball perfectly. See the pitch coming in slow motion. Feel your bat connecting. Hear the crack. Watch the ball soar. Do this every night this week." I thought it was strange, but I respected Coach Miller. That night, lying in bed, I closed my eyes and imagined myself hitting a perfect line drive. I could almost feel the vibration of the bat connecting with the ball, hear the satisfying crack, see the ball shooting between the shortstop and third baseman. I did this every night that week as instructed. The next game I stepped up to the plate with the usual knot in my stomach. The first pitch came, and I swung and missed. The second pitch, another swing and miss. But something felt different. I wasn't panicking like I usually did. When the third pitch came, I swung and connected. Not the perfect line drive of my visualization, but a decent grounder that got me safely to first base. I looked over at Coach Miller, who just nodded with a knowing smile. By season's end, I was batting a respectable 250, not exactly major league material, but a miraculous improvement from 0. I didn't understand it then, but Coach Miller had introduced me to the incredible power of subconscious conditioning. Years later, as a psychology student, I would learn the science behind what Coach Miller instinctively understood, that our subconscious mind is an incredibly powerful force that shapes our behaviors, beliefs, and even our capabilities in ways we rarely appreciate. What Coach Miller had me do was a simple form of mental rehearsal, a technique now commonly used by elite athletes, surgeons, and performers to improve their skills through consistent visualization. But the power of subconscious conditioning goes far beyond sports performance. It influences virtually every aspect of our lives, often without our awareness. Those unconscious patterns, beliefs, and associations we've accumulated throughout our lives silently guide our decisions, shape our habits, and even determine our emotional reactions to situations. Think about this. Researchers estimate that our conscious mind processes about 40 bits of information per second, which sounds impressive until you learn that our subconscious mind processes approximately 11 million bits per second. That means most of our mental processing, our reactions, judgments, feelings, and behaviors, happens below our conscious awareness. I discovered this reality in my own life when I couldn't figure out why I kept sabotaging promising relationships. On paper, everything would look perfect. I'd meet someone kind, attractive, available, and interested in me. Things would go well for a few months, and then I'd find myself pulling away, finding fault, creating distance until the relationship inevitably collapsed. After the third time this happened, my best friend Morgan sat me down. "Alex," she said, "have you ever considered that this pattern might have something to do with your parents' divorce when you were 8? I immediately dismissed the idea. My parents' split had been relatively amicable. There was no dramatic trauma, no screaming fights, just a calm explanation that they'd grown apart and were better as friends than as married partners. I'd processed it well, or so I thought. But Morgan's question stuck with me. I began to notice something I'd never consciously registered before. My relationships always seemed to fall apart around the 4-month mark, and with a jolt, I realized that was exactly how long my parents had told us they were taking a break before announcing their permanent separation. Subconsciously, I'd created an association that relationships that reach the 4-month milestone are about to end, so I'd been preemptively ending them myself, a classic case of psychological self-protection. This realization was both disturbing and liberating. I had been operating on autopilot, driven by a subconscious conditioning I didn't even know existed. This experience led me down a rabbit hole of research into how the subconscious mind forms these powerful associations and how they shape our lives. What I discovered was both fascinating and somewhat unsettling. Your subconscious conditioning begins forming before you're even born. In one remarkable study, pregnant women were asked to read a particular Dr. Seuss book aloud several times during their final trimester. After birth, researchers found that their newborns showed a measurable preference for the rhythm of that specific story compared to other Dr. Seuss books they hadn't heard in the womb. Before these babies had even taken their first breath, their subconscious was already being conditioned. From those earliest moments, your brain is constantly absorbing information, forming associations, and creating patterns, most of which happen without your conscious awareness. A child who is consistently told they're not good at math will likely struggle with math for years, not because of any inherent lack of ability, but because their subconscious has accepted and internalized this limitation as truth. I saw this play out with my nephew Tyler. From an early age, his parents jokingly referred to him as their little artist, praising his creativity while making casual comments about him not inheriting the family's science genes. By 3rd grade, Tyler was excelling in art and creative writing, but struggling with science and math. His teachers were puzzled because testing showed he had strong analytical abilities that weren't reflected in his performance. During a family dinner, I noticed how Tyler immediately passed any science-related questions to his sister, saying, "Ask her, she's the smart one." That's when I realized what was happening. Tyler's subconscious had been conditioned to believe he couldn't excel in these subjects, so he wasn't even trying. I took a risk and bought Tyler a telescope for his birthday, along with a membership to a weekend astronomy club for kids. Crucially, I framed astronomy as a creative endeavor. Artists have always been fascinated by the stars, I told him. 6 months later, Tyler was not only thriving in the astronomy club, but had improved his science grades significantly. By bypassing his subconscious belief about being bad at science and linking astronomy to his established identity as an artist, we'd created a new pathway for learning. This experience highlights something critical about subconscious conditioning. It often operates through identity-based beliefs. Your subconscious holds deep convictions about who you are. I'm not athletic. I'm a bad public speaker. I'm always late. And these identity beliefs drive your behaviors far more powerfully than conscious intentions. Consider how often people fail at New Year's resolutions. They consciously decide to exercise more or eat healthier, but these surface-level intentions are no match for deeply entrenched subconscious patterns. The person who subconsciously identifies as someone who hates exercise will find their motivation mysteriously evaporating after a few weeks, while the conscious mind scrambles to rationalize the abandoned fitness routine. I experienced this disconnect myself when trying to become an early riser. Despite setting multiple alarms and having genuine intentions to wake up at 5:30 a.m., I would find myself hitting snooze or even completely turning off my alarms with no recollection of doing so. My conscious desire to be an early riser was being overridden by my subconscious self-concept as not a morning person. The breakthrough came when I realized I needed to recondition this subconscious identity. Instead of just setting alarms, I began using the moments before sleep, when the subconscious mind is most receptive, to visualize myself as someone who naturally wakes up feeling energized before dawn. I created a detailed mental image of waking refreshed, enjoying the quiet morning hours, and feeling accomplished before most people's days had even begun. I also recorded myself saying phrases like, "I naturally wake up early, feeling refreshed and energized," and played this softly while sleeping. Within 3 weeks, something remarkable happened. I started waking up naturally at 5:25 a.m., just before my alarm. My subconscious identity had shifted, and the behavior followed effortlessly. This experience taught me that the most effective way to create lasting change isn't through willpower or conscious effort alone, but by deliberately reconditioning the subconscious patterns that drive our automatic behaviors. But here's what's really fascinating. Your subconscious conditioning isn't just determining your habits and behaviors, it's literally shaping how you perceive reality. Neuroscience has revealed that your brain doesn't passively record your experiences like a video camera. Instead, it actively constructs your perception of reality based on existing beliefs, expectations, and past experiences. In one compelling study, researchers had participants taste test what they were told were 5 different wines ranging in price from $5 to $90 per bottle. The participants consistently rated the more expensive wines as tasting better, reporting more pleasure on both subjective ratings and fMRI brain scans. The twist? There were only 3 wines, and some were presented twice with different price tags. The participants' subconscious expectations about price and quality literally changed how their brains processed the taste. I've seen this reality-shaping power of the subconscious at work in my own life. For years, I considered myself just not good with directions, a belief that had been reinforced since childhood when family members would joke about my tendency to get lost. This belief became a self-fulfilling prophecy. I would get anxious when navigating unfamiliar areas, which impaired my ability to pay attention to landmarks and routes, which led to more instances of getting lost, which further reinforced my belief. The cycle broke during a solo trip to Tokyo. Without friends or family to rely on, and with limited cellular data, I had no choice but to navigate one of the world's most complex cities by myself. To my shock, after the initial adjustment period, I discovered I could navigate reasonably well. With my subconscious belief temporarily suspended by necessity, my actual capacity for spatial orientation emerged. Since then, I've become a competent navigator, not naturally gifted, but far from the directionally helpless person I'd believed myself to be. This illustrates a critical insight. Many of our perceived limitations are actually subconscious conditioning that can be changed. Your mind creates self-fulfilling prophecies, for better or worse. When your subconscious believes something to be true about you or the world, it filters your experiences to confirm that belief, creating a powerful cycle that can be either limiting or liberating. The good news is that just as negative conditioning can happen unconsciously, positive reconditioning can be done deliberately. The subconscious mind is highly responsive to several specific methods of influence. The first is repetition. Your subconscious learns through consistent exposure to ideas, images, or experiences. This is why advertising works. See a brand logo enough times, and your subconscious develops a familiarity that translates to trust. This same principle can be applied to personal development. Consistently exposing yourself to a new belief or idea, through affirmations, visualization, or deliberate practice, can gradually shift your subconscious patterns. I discovered the power of repetition when working to overcome my public speaking anxiety. Rather than just practicing speeches, I recorded myself saying, "I communicate with clarity and confidence," and played this on loop during my daily commute. I also created a visualization routine where I repeatedly imagined myself speaking calmly and engagingly to an appreciative audience. After several weeks of this repetition, I noticed my automatic nervous response beginning to diminish. My hands stopped shaking, my voice became steadier, and presenting started to feel more natural. The second powerful method is emotional intensity. Your subconscious gives special weight to experiences with strong emotional content. This is why trauma can create such deep conditioning, often requiring therapeutic intervention. But it also means positive emotional experiences can create powerful positive conditioning. This principle was transformative when I worked with Lisa, a talented designer who struggled with imposter syndrome despite her obvious skills. We created an evidence journal where she recorded not just her accomplishments, but crucially how she felt during moments of creative success. By deliberately intensifying and revisiting these positive emotional experiences, she began to recondition her subconscious self-image. Within months, she was confidently pursuing opportunities she would have previously dismissed as beyond her league. The third key method is to utilize the power of the sleep-wake boundary. The moments just before falling asleep and just after waking are when your brain is in a theta wave state, a relaxed receptive condition where the subconscious is particularly open to new programming. This is why reading or watching something uplifting before sleep and setting positive intentions first thing in the morning can be so effective for reconditioning your mind. I've made this a cornerstone of my personal development routine. Each night before sleep, I spend 5 minutes mentally reviewing what went well that day and visualizing what I want to create tomorrow. Each morning before reaching for my phone or getting out of bed, I consciously choose a positive focus for the day ahead. These simple practices leverage the natural theta state to recondition my subconscious expectations. Perhaps the most profound aspect of subconscious conditioning is how it shapes our relationships. The patterns established in your earliest relationships, particularly with caregivers, create templates in your subconscious that influence all your future connections. If you experienced consistent love and support, your subconscious likely expects relationships to be nurturing and positive. If your early relationships were characterized by volatility or neglect, your subconscious may have formed very different expectations. My friend Rachel struggled for years with a pattern of attracting emotionally unavailable partners. Despite consciously wanting a committed relationship, she repeatedly found herself drawn to people who couldn't or wouldn't fully engage emotionally. Through therapy, she discovered that this pattern stemmed from her relationship with her father, a man who clearly loved her, but was rarely present due to his demanding career. Rachel's subconscious had been conditioned to equate love with emotional distance. The breakthrough came when Rachel realized she could recondition this pattern. She began consciously seeking and appreciating emotionally available people in all areas of her life: friends, colleagues, and eventually romantic partners. She practiced sitting with the initially uncomfortable feeling of having someone fully present and engaged with her. Over time, her subconscious recalibrated what felt normal in relationships, and her pattern of attraction shifted accordingly. This process of reconditioning requires something vitally important: self-awareness. You need to become conscious of your subconscious patterns before you can change them. This involves developing what psychologists call the observing self, the part of you that can step back and notice your automatic reactions, thoughts, and behaviors without immediately identifying with them. I've found meditation to be invaluable for developing this observing self. The practice of watching my thoughts without attachment has helped me identify subconscious patterns I never would have noticed otherwise. Like my tendency to procrastinate, not when tasks are difficult, as I had always assumed, but specifically when they involve potential social evaluation. This awareness allowed me to target the real subconscious fear, judgment, rather than the surface issue, task difficulty. Journaling is another powerful tool for building self-awareness. By regularly recording your experiences, reactions, and patterns, you begin to see the themes and triggers that your conscious mind might otherwise miss. One client of mine discovered through journaling that her anxiety attacks weren't random as she had believed, but were consistently triggered by situations that echoed a childhood experience of being singled out and criticized in front of others. But even with awareness, reconditioning the subconscious takes time and consistency. Unlike the conscious mind, which can change its thinking instantaneously, the subconscious shifts gradually through repeated exposure to new patterns and associations. This explains why personal change often follows a 2 steps forward, 1 step back progression. Your new conditioning is building strength, but old patterns may reassert themselves under stress or in familiar triggers. I experienced this during my journey to overcome social anxiety. After months of progress using various reconditioning techniques, I found myself reverting to old avoidance behaviors during a particularly stressful work period. Initially, I berated myself for failing, but then I realized this temporary regression was part of the process. Instead of giving up, I doubled down on my reconditioning practices and pushed through the plateau. The setback was temporary, but the eventual breakthrough was permanent. This highlights something crucial. Reconditioning your subconscious isn't about achieving perfection. It's about changing the dominant pattern over time. Even the most ingrained subconscious conditioning can be rewired with persistent, targeted effort. One of the most powerful reconditioning methods I've encountered combines several principles we've discussed. Progressive desensitization. This involves gradually exposing yourself to situations that trigger unwanted subconscious reactions while maintaining a state of relaxation or positive emotion. Over time, your subconscious forms a new association with the previously triggering stimulus. I used this approach to overcome a debilitating fear of flying that had limited my personal and professional life for years. Rather than forcing myself onto a plane in a state of terror, which would only reinforce the fear, I created a progressive sequence, first watching videos of planes while practicing relaxation techniques, then visiting an airport as an observer, then sitting in a grounded plane during an airport tour, and so on. Each step reconditioned my subconscious to associate planes with calm rather than panic. Today, I can fly with minimal anxiety, not because I'm using willpower to suppress fear, but because my subconscious no longer generates the fear response. This example illustrates what might be the most important insight about subconscious conditioning. Sustainable change doesn't come from forcing yourself to act against your programming. True transformation happens when you actually update the programming itself, so that your desired behaviors become automatic and effortless. Consider how you learned to drive. Initially, every aspect required conscious attention, checking mirrors, signaling, braking, accelerating. But with practice, these actions became automated, handled by your subconscious, while your conscious mind focused on destinations or conversations. This same process can work for any behavior or response pattern, from emotional reactions to health habits to professional skills. The implications of this understanding are profound. It means that the internal conflicts we often experience, knowing we should exercise but not wanting to, knowing we should speak up but feeling afraid, knowing we should save money but impulse shopping anyway, aren't moral failings or lack of discipline. They're simply misalignments between our conscious intentions and our subconscious conditioning. When you align both parts of your mind toward the same goal, change becomes not only possible, but natural. This is what athletes call being in the zone, and what positive psychologists call flow, that state where actions feel effortless because the conscious and subconscious minds are working in perfect harmony. I've experienced this state in my own journey from financial anxiety to confidence. For years, I consciously knew the principles of good financial management, but subconsciously held limiting beliefs about wealth and my relationship with money. No matter how many budgeting apps I tried or finance books I read, I couldn't maintain positive financial habits. The shift began when I realized I needed to address the subconscious conditioning, not just the surface behaviors. Through techniques like visualization, affirmation, and deliberately seeking positive money experiences, I gradually reconditioned my subconscious patterns around finances. Today, saving and investing feel natural and satisfying, not depriving or stressful. My behaviors changed because the underlying programming changed. This is perhaps the greatest lesson I've learned about the power of subconscious conditioning. We are not permanently defined by our past programming. With awareness and deliberate effort, we can recondition even our most deep-seated patterns. This doesn't mean it's easy. The deeper and more emotionally charged the conditioning, the more persistent effort may be required to change it. But it is almost always possible. As neuroscientist and psychiatrist Dr. Daniel Siegel puts it, where attention goes, neural firing flows, and neural connection grows. Every time you direct your attention toward a new thought pattern or behavioral response, you're literally reshaping your brain, building new neural pathways that can eventually become your default mode of operation. This neuroplasticity, your brain's lifelong ability to reorganize itself through new experiences, is the biological basis for our ability to change subconscious conditioning. It's why the same mind that was once conditioned to fear public speaking can be reconditioned to enjoy it. Why the same mind that was trained to crave unhealthy foods can be retrained to desire nutritious ones. Why the same mind that learned to expect rejection can learn to expect connection. Understanding and harnessing the power of your subconscious conditioning may be the most important personal development work you ever do, because when your deepest mental programming aligns with your conscious goals and values, you experience that rare and wonderful state where doing the right thing feels like the easy thing, where your potential can finally express itself without the handbrake of conflicting internal programs. That Little League baseball field, where Coach Miller first introduced me to visualization, was just the beginning of my journey with subconscious conditioning. Since then, I've seen its principles transform not just my own life, but the lives of friends, family members, and clients. From overcoming phobias to building new habits, from improving relationships to enhancing performance, the common denominator in sustainable personal change is almost always the same: successful reconditioning of the subconscious mind. So the next time you find yourself struggling to make a change, remember, the most powerful approach might not be to push harder with conscious effort, but to work smarter by addressing the subconscious patterns that truly drive your behaviors. Because when you change your subconscious conditioning, you change your life. Hey everyone, if this exploration of the subconscious mind resonated with you, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into how our minds really work. Drop a comment below sharing any techniques you've used to change your own mental programming. I read all your comments and love learning from your experiences too. Until next time, remember, the most powerful changes happen below the surface. Keep conditioning your mind for success, and I'll see you in the next video.